A mid-sized bank processing 5 million transactions a month is bleeding up to $23 million a year in completely avoidable costs. Not from fraud, not from bad loans, from a configuration decision most compliance teams don't even know they're making. Welcome to Ionova Insights. Today we are breaking down one of the most expensive misconceptions in the ISO 2022 migration, the idea that hybrid addressing is the simpler, lower-effort path to compliance. But is hybrid really simpler? By November 2026, the global financial system undergoes a forced migration to the ISO 20022 messaging standard. Every institution must upgrade how they process cross-border data, taking a chaotic flood of legacy text and forcing it into a highly standardized format. Right now, payment heads are deadlocked over how to handle the most complex piece of this migration: physical addresses. They are choosing between two paths: hybrid addressing, which allows some free text, or fully structured addressing, which breaks every component into its own discrete field. A consensus has formed across the industry. Generic vendors and risk-averse compliance teams assume hybrid is the pragmatic, easier route to meet the regulatory fallback. Structured, they argue, is a rigid, overly demanding engineering headache that can wait. This bar chart illustrates the economic fallout of that assumption. For a mid-sized bank processing 5 million monthly transactions, settling for the minimum viable compliance of a hybrid-only approach bleeds between $13 and $23 million a year in manual exception costs. The industry is confusing the floor with the ceiling. They are looking at the minimum regulatory acceptance for hybrid addresses and assuming it translates to a simpler engineering project. It doesn't. Choosing hybrid means paying the exact same engineering price to build the system, but capturing only a tiny fraction of the operational value. The reason lies in the architecture of a standard 10 to 16-week sidecar integration. Real-world address data is messy, and resolving it requires a strict processing pipeline. This diagram outlines the 5 distinct nodes every address must pass through: ingest, parse, validate, enrich, and map. First, the system must ingest the data. It takes in chaotic, mixed-format strings and alphanumeric codes exactly as they exist in legacy databases. Second, the system parses that text. This requires intense computational linguistics to break the string apart, understanding complex contexts like Asian addressing conventions or specific floor notations. Third, it validates those isolated pieces. A plausible-looking street name is useless until it is confirmed against authoritative postal databases and specific country codes. Fourth, it enriches the data. The system does the heavy lifting of geographical disambiguation, like figuring out which of the 28 cities named Paris a payment is going to, and it preserves critical financial identifiers like LEIs or IBANs hidden inside the text. Those first 4 stages account for 95% of the total engineering, testing, and integration effort, and they are completely identical whether your final target output is hybrid or structured. The divergence happens entirely at stage 5, the map. For a structured output, the routing switch directs the validated data cleanly into 5 separate, evenly structured XML buckets required by the ISO 20022 schema: street name, building number, town, country, and postal code. For a hybrid output, the system populates the town and country buckets and then lazily dumps the remaining validated data into unvalidated, free text address lines. This output stage is a configuration parameter. It is a simple policy toggle in the software. It requires 0 additional architectural engineering. Treating the final output format as a massive architectural dilemma ignores the reality that the underlying pipeline has already executed the exact same heavy lifting. When you flip that toggle to hybrid, you inherit severe operational failures. Free text address lines force downstream intermediary banks to manually intervene, trapping the industry at a dismal 25 to 40% straight-through processing rate. You also expose the bank to severe compliance dangers. Take an address like Cuba Street, Wellington, New Zealand. Because a hybrid string lacks distinct field labels, screening engines frequently flag the word Cuba as a strict territorial sanction, burying compliance analysts in false positives. This dual-axis line graph compares the outcomes. When you output structured data, the straight-through processing rate climbs to over 98%, and exception rates plummet below 2%. The fields are flawlessly machine-readable, so Cuba Street, New Zealand triggers 0 false alarms. Selecting a hybrid-only output leaves institutions drowning in operational debt and prevents them from building the clean data foundation required for future AI automation. Despite these outcomes, many banks are actively planning to implement hybrid now and upgrade to structured later. History shows us this is a predictable cost trap. It is the equivalent of paying a contractor to lay the plumbing for 2 bathrooms, but only connecting the pipes for 1 because the second connection can wait. The hard work is already done. You are simply leaving value on the table. European Payment Council mandates tighten further in 2027. A hybrid-only approach implicitly guarantees a second, costly project that will require remobilizing organizational resources, retraining operations staff, and repeating the testing cycle. The engineering pipeline takes 10 to 16 weeks either way. The rational path is to build the pipeline once, default your configuration to structured, and rely on hybrid merely as an automated fallback for specific corridors that aren't ready yet. The pipeline cost is identical either way. The only question is how much operational value you're willing to leave on the table. If you're in the middle of the ISO 20022 structured address migration and want an expert's opinion on your specific situation, book a 30-minute call with Parse using the link in the description. We'll see you in the next one.